Start with an introduction. I'm Carol. I'm the founder of Parentally. For those who don't know, Parentally is a new platform that helps new and future parents find extra care and support during pregnancy, birth, postpartum, and their first years of parenthood. We have a network of about 70 verified practitioners and counting, including doulas, childbirth educators, lactation consultants, child sleep coaches, massage therapists, nutritionists, family coaches, and many, many more. Sorry?
I said that's amazing. That's amazing. It's a platform for people like us to be able to actually make use of so that others can actually find us, you know. I think it's a platform. So well done. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. That's our mission. And we started in Amsterdam, and now practitioners are available all across the Netherlands. So yeah, today is our first live on Parentally. I'm very excited, also a bit nervous, but
oh, Carol, you and I know each other really well, so it's going to be like a conversation. No,
I know.
It's good.
What I wanted to say is that this live is recorded, so if you cannot make it until the end, it's going to be about 30 minutes. So I will record it and share it on the feed of Parentally. So we're going to talk about hypnobirthing, and it's my absolute pleasure to talk with you, Chitra Natarajan. Chitra is a hypnobirthing practitioner. She's the beautiful soul behind Akriti, your company. So how are you? So nice to talk with you.
Really well. I'm really happy to be here because, you know, of course, you know, you and I have known each other for a while. I think when you wanted to do the hypnobirthing course for your second pregnancy, so I think we've known each other for almost 6 years. But when you got in touch with me saying that, you know, you wanted to actually start this platform, I was so thrilled and so happy because, you know, something as robust as Parentally is needed, you know, in a place like Amsterdam and also in the Netherlands for people to know that such, you know, such amazing practitioners actually exist for people to be able to access different kind of practitioners. So yeah, and I'm doing really well, and I'm really excited to be here to be able to have a conversation with you. So yeah, go. Yeah, let's take this forward.
It's great. It's my first live, and to be honest, I am a bit nervous, but I'm glad I can get to do this with you. And like you said, we've known each other for a while. But you definitely made an impression on me, and also contributed to the fact that I wanted to launch Parentally. You know, sometimes you make these encounters, and you know, it makes an impression. It makes you want to do things. And hypnobirthing for me was really, like I already said that before, but it was a revelation. My first birthing experience was a bit traumatic. I say a bit because I'll say a bit, but it was traumatic. I don't have a good souvenir, if I can put it so. So I really wanted the second birth to go better. I didn't want to have a C-section again. But hypnobirthing did that, and I'm so thankful, so grateful that someone recommended this to me. But yeah, maybe we before we dive into the subject, maybe we can do some proper introduction. Chitra, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us who you are, what you do.
Yes. Absolutely. So my name is Chitra Natarajan. For everybody who's listening right now, I'm a childbirth educator. I'm also a hypnobirthing practitioner, and I've been an educator since 2010. And I did my hypnobirthing certification in 2011, and there has been no looking back since. I teach at 3 different locations in Amsterdam, Utrecht, as well as in Hilversum. And the constant feedback has always been how empowering and how great an experience that it has been for the parents who actually take the course. I'm originally from India, but I moved here because of my husband's work. We lived in Africa before. We lived in Ghana, Nigeria. We also lived in the US, and then we moved here saying that, yes, we're going to be here only for a year or two. 15 years later. Here. But it was also the transition into, you know, moving into the Netherlands, and also, you know, understanding the Dutch maternity system sort of like opened my eyes into what I wanted to do, because I have a background in corporate human resources. I was working for a corporate company. I have 10 years of experience in doing that, but it was the move here and also having my own birthing experience, which was a positive birthing experience. So I first certified myself with Lamas International in the US. I had a mentorship program in LA. Um, and then I wanted to sort of, dive a little bit more deeper into this subject. And I wanted to sort of, hypnobirthing was in my radar. And then I trained with, with the Hypnobirthing Institute in 2011. And I started actually, teaching hypnobirthing. So I've been teaching since. So yeah, that is my little background. I live with my husband and my daughter, who's almost 16.
Wow.
So I'm also sort of like transitioning. I'm also a mother of a teenager now. But yeah, the experience in itself in terms of, how the whole setup of how I've sort of set up my practice in the Netherlands and how things have been, I think that's definitely because of hypnobirthing, because the content is so good. And, understanding the nuances of different techniques that comes with hypnobirthing, but also empowering parents in what scenarios, that the birth might sort of unfold. Having all that right information sort of makes them feel a lot more confident about how to approach their birth with a positive mindset. And they come out of the birthing experience with so much of joy and happiness. And that is what we have to strive to achieve, especially with the hypnobirthing course. So that's what makes me so happy to be able to teach this course for such a long time.
And you do it so well.
Oh, thank
But
you.
what, like, coming from the corporate world, how did you decide to transition to teaching hypnobirthing? How did you even learn about hypnobirthing, actually?
Very interesting, story, because we used to live in Utrecht then. We live in
Yeah.
and I had my neighbor, a Dutch neighbor, who became pregnant and who kept saying that, I'm definitely going to like go to the hospital and give birth. And she ended up having an accidental home birth. I remember nudging my husband, elbowing my husband in the middle of the night, saying that, oh my God, she's given birth. I can feel the baby. That sort of like, opened my eyes into like, how could this happen? If you think about how birth happens, say, for example, where I come from in India, everything is so medicalized. I remember having this conversation when I wanted to actually start this journey of, becoming a birth educator. I had to have a conversation around, with a lot of my friends and family. And I also remember having a conversation with my grandmother where she sort of mentioned what went on with her birthing experience when she gave birth to my mother, where she gave birth at home, to when my mother gave birth to me in the same village, but then she gave birth in the hospital where she had to go to a clinic. So in India, if you see that the birth is so institutionalized, birth, it means that you have to actually be in the hospital to be able to actually give birth, to how and how to sort of like, give birthing. In the birth experience in the Netherlands is so completely different. You still have an option of whether you want to give birth at home, if you're a healthy mother, you've had a healthy pregnancy, or you could decide at the last minute that you can actually go to the birthing center to give birth, or a hospital which is attached to the birthing center. So that sort of like opened my eyes, that got me very, very curious. And that's how I sort of make the transition. I also have to tell you, when I moved here in 2007, I was supposed to join the same company as my husband as, as a training manager for Benelux. I came here with a small child, with a 14-month-old. And then, I couldn't actually put her in a daycare for more than, 1 day a week. I couldn't actually find a daycare. This was before the 2008 crash. And that was quite hard. So I had to let go of my offer. I couldn't actually join the work that was promised to me. So that made me a little bitter and being upset as well. But I also wanted to, it's really hard when, when you have a plan and the plan doesn't go through. And I had also not made those connections. I mean, I'm also talking about the time before social media, right? So no resources were available. I mean, those were the Orkut days, before Facebook, or any of this as social media that was, as a possibility, to a point where I had to reinvent myself. So I was actually looking at what is it that's something that really energized me. Becoming a parent, that changed my perspective completely. I was one of those people from the corporate world who just thought, yeah, I'll have a baby, I'll put her in a daycare, I'm going to get back to work. To those things sort of changed for me, and then I said, okay, I'm going to definitely go ahead and, do something where a career in a suitcase sort of a thing, because we had also moved so much. We were in Nigeria and Ghana, Minneapolis. And then I said, okay, tomorrow my husband might say that, we have to probably be in Sweden. So let's make sure that, I would do this. And my dad was also an entrepreneur. So I always had this, curiosity in me to try something. And I said, I'm going to go ahead and do this. And end of the day, I really like the subject. And, I also have a background in science, and I have a master's in business administration and human resources. I said, it's all about people, end of the day. And it's also connecting science with people. And I said, okay, I'm going to try this. And if it works and if it amalgamates, that's fantastic. And if it doesn't, then I might have to actually look into going back into the corporate world or do something else. So sometimes it's a bit scary when you actually have to make the journey, but I'm so glad I did that.
No, that's fantastic. It's a great story. But had you heard about of hypnobirthing during your first pregnancy already?
No.
Yeah. No.
Not because, you know, I was in India, but I did, you know, so that was the period where we were moving from Africa to the US, but there was a period where we had to be in Africa. We didn't want to have a child there because of the difficulties of, you know, having an access to hospitals. And sometimes it's really, really hard to see the state of some of the hospitals, you know, in a poor country, for example. And, you know, we were so privileged to be able to actually make the decision of, you know, not being there and to be able to go back home. And I also wanted to have the support of my parents because we didn't want to give birth all by ourselves. So we became pregnant, we fell pregnant, and then, you know, we were in India when we wanted to, you know, have my daughter. So at that point in time, I only knew how to prepare myself with just the birth education that was available at that point. But I'd also read Ina May Gaskin's book that also gave me a lot of strength to be able to actually go through this whole experience. So my experience was fantastic, but only for me to later realize that my experience of going into spontaneous labor was not a norm, you know, was an exception. Because most of the time, so I went into labor at say 39 weeks and 4 days. But my OBGYN also told me in India that if you go beyond the 40th week, we will induce you. So I don't know what would have happened. That's the road that was not. I don't know what if, you know, I might have had a completely different experience if it was an induction, right? I went into labor, so I gave birth and my experience was fantastic. So I wanted to sort of like make use of my experience and also to talk about, you know, how sort of, you know, as a birthing person, as a mother, you go through that change and nobody prepares you for that change. You know, everyone talks about pregnancy in a way where they say, oh, it's a fantastic experience and you should be part of, you know, it's a great joy to be a mother, to be pregnant and to be able to give birth. But there is also this constant fear about labor and birth. I wanted to actually talk more about that. So that's why I wanted to actually make that shift and learn and understand a bit more, understand the science behind physiology, so that I could help others. I wanted to sort of give something back to the community, and that's how it all came into existence.
Yeah, but you know, it's also because that's all we know. That's all we see in the television and in the shows and everything. It's only women in the hospital crying and you know,
screaming and, you know,
in pain.
Hollywood movies,
Screaming.
the mothers,
Exactly.
you know, this girl's water breaks and then, you know, she's suddenly being whisked away by her partner, rushing to the hospital, and then she's immediately pushing. All of those can still happen, but it doesn't
absolutely
have that dramatic. It doesn't have to be that way. I think it's more about having an understanding of what goes on physiologically, just to be prepared. And also, I absolutely love the Dutch midwifery care. I mean, we're looking at a long-standing tradition of the last 450 to 500 years that they've sort of like preserved it to a point where if you've had a very healthy pregnancy and there are specific scope that's set with the midwives, that you can actually consult with the midwife and to be able to, you know, give birth wherever you want, whether you want to give birth at home or whether you want to be at the hospital or the birthing center. All of that is definitely a possibility. And that's something that people need to know. And especially I wanted to work with expats or people like me who've come from different countries. And when they have to actually navigate the system here, they sort of feel a bit overwhelmed to a point where they think that, but why is it that, you know, in my country, back at my home, you know, they would give me more information about, you know, about doing these extra tests and why is it asked to do this. There's a reason as to, you know, why this, it's always about, we look at what we call as around the birthing person, you know, it's mother-centric or women-centric. If there's anything that goes on, then you are going to be actually talking more to your midwife to be for her to be able to actually help you a little better. But I also think that the Dutch are firm believers in personal responsibility and freedom. So they expect you to prepare yourself and come and ask for more questions. So but when you come from a different part of the world and then you sort of feel like, why is it that these people are not giving idea for you to actually ask for more? Those are that, that I focus on in my class as well, to make people understand how empowering and how fantastic this birthing system is, but at the same time understanding your rights, and also understanding the normal physiology. And the course as a content in itself is fantastic because I teach hypnobirthing from the Hypnobirthing Institute. As a certified practitioner, I can only teach hypnobirthing as 5 sessions for 2.5 hours each, but it always goes up to 3 because people are always hanging out and asking for more questions, or there's more to always have a conversation around. And then for those 5 sessions, we sort of build it up over a period of time. So it's a perfect combination of theory and practice. So there are a lot of tools that parents would be actually learning, right from breathing techniques to hypnosis and relaxation, to deepening exercises, visualizations. I think visualizations are extremely powerful. How to use those visualizations, affirmations, and also as an educator, as a practitioner, my role to actually empower parents with evidence-based research to say what are that they need to be looking at, and what are the things that they need to have conversations around. And I also help them write their birth preferences. So it's a very the entire course is like very full. So by the time they 15 hours with me, they have all the information that they really need for them to actually sort of focus on what is to come. Carol, I think there was somebody who had actually asked a question saying that if I do the teacher training for a hypnobirthing practitioner. No, unfortunately, I don't. I'm just a hypnobirthing practitioner just to empower parents. You probably want to look at the Hypnobirthing International website in the US if you'd like to train to become a hypnobirthing practitioner. Yeah.
Great. And actually, I wanted to dive deeper into the hypnobirthing and to better understand, well, I do know, but maybe the participants to this live don't know, what are the components of hypnobirthing really? My experience with hypnobirthing, because I had my first birth in the US, it was in the hospital. I didn't really prepare because I just followed the course that were recommended by the hospital. It was, all things considered, I think they did a great job, but it was just what I was expecting. So when I started looking into other ways to prepare for my second birth, I really didn't want to get a C-section because we lived on the 3rd floor, and the first time around we lived on the 5th floor, and I was like living in a tower, I couldn't go down the stairs. So I was so isolated, so lonely. So I really wanted to find a way to not get through another C-section. To prepare in a natural way. And my acupuncturist at the time told me about hypnobirthing. And I was like, hypnobirthing? What is this thing? Like, even just the name itself, for me, it was already a bit off-putting. I was like, I don't know, is this another hippy-dippy thing? And it's anything but. I think it's interesting to maybe focus for a bit on all the components of hypnobirthing and all the tools that you learned during the course.
Of course.
To prepare for birth.
It's a very interesting thing that you actually sort of mentioned, because hypnosis somehow sort of have a very bad reputation. Unfortunately, it is a bit sad that it has happened that way. But the whole course in itself with Marie Mongan, what she's actually done is she was a hypnotherapist, and she wanted to actually make use of the hypnotherapy tools to help her daughter give birth to her grandson. So, so she wanted to sort of, make use of some of these tools. What goes on when you are in labor? There is always the possibility of it's the fear of the unknown. Everything is a bit uncertain. So when that fear sort of kicks in, it's the stress hormones that takes over to a point where the birth usually becomes very medical. So she wanted to actually help her daughter, understand these tools and make use of these tools so that she can actually stay calm and stay connected. So the idea is for us to understand what goes on in our body, physiologically, and to be able to actually keep your mind in set, as much as I always say this, I give this analogy of, we can't wake up one morning and say, okay, I'm going to run 42 kilometers today. I'm going to train for a marathon. And that's just not possible. Even if you're actually practicing for a marathon, you never run a full 42 kilometers. You stop at, say, 30 kilometers. And then the 42 kilometers run is one that you actually do on the day of the run. It's the same way you're as much as you're, preparing yourself physically, you also have to prepare yourself emotionally and, psychically. And that's when hypnobirthing tools comes into picture. So we talk about 3 different types of breathing techniques: as calm breathing technique, surge breathing technique, and the birth breathing technique. That will come really handy, and how to actually make use of these breathing techniques during the whole process of labor. And also, like I said, relaxation and meditation, right? There are a lot of these layers that we talk about. When you think about hypnosis is being in that sleep-like or a trance-like state where you are open to suggestions, which you're normally not in the normal waking level. When we are having a conversation like this, Carol, the logical part of the brain is working, right? So you are Carol and I'm Chitra, and we are very pronounced and present, and we present ourselves in a certain way. Our brain is actually giving us those signs, and for us to sort of be very logical, because we are also sort of talking on a platform, on a social media platform, where people will be in a position to have a look at this conversation for a long period of time, for a long time to come. So we want to sort of make that, we say the right thing and we present ourselves differently. Whereas when we are in labor, we are no longer very logical. We become like another mammal. We become like, a cat or a dog or a cow, say, for example, giving a barn. So for that change that needs to happen, our endocrine system sort of plays a huge role in this whole process. And we should be in a position to sort of embrace those hormones that we actually produce, those different concoction of hormones that sort of set stone for how the laboring process will sort of go on and unfold to a point where it happens at a point that feels comfortable for the birthing mother. But the fear is the inhibiting factor. So we have to try and sort of see what we can do. So we work on what we call as laws of conditioning of the mind. It's called a psychophysical association. I teach relaxation exercises, as which has been recorded in a hypnotic fashion to put you to sleep somewhat. So that's something that I usually ask parents to sort of practice on, and we talk about that. That happens over a period of time. And the other tools, like some of the deepening techniques, the techniques that you can actually practice with your partner. So when the going is tough, you have another tool in your bag to be able to sort of help you come back to normalcy, come back to staying calm or staying relaxed. Yeah. As we say that, you have to stay calm and stay relaxed, we are only human, right? We will dip the stress hormone cycle. We sort of will go to that, oh, I'm not so sure whether I can actually do this or not. I'm feeling a bit uncertain. But we don't want the, parents, the mothers, to be in that space for a long period of time. We have to come back to the oxytocin cycle and the endorphins. Yes. Possible. So all these different tools really basically help. So that's your deepening techniques. And visualizations are extremely powerful. When you think about visualization, I mean, it's not only for birth, right? Visualizations can help when you create a mood board, for example, as to what you want to achieve when you're goal setting for the year, or when you're writing down your KPIs, if you're working in a corporate setting, or if you are, what else can I say? Say, for example, if you are a sports person. So if you play rugby, you play, any of the sports, apart from the strength training that they do and the matches that they play, they also have to visualize, about where position would be on the field. So visualizations are extremely powerful, and there are some guided imageries that we also do. So you're basically sort of, looking at your birth in a very positive perspective, to a point where you feel confident about your body and about your baby. So that's about visualizations. And affirmations. Affirmations, again, are very, again, it's very, very positive. So affirmations for the mother, affirmations for the birth companions as well, so that it also sort of becomes, a part of the daily routine. So we have to try and sort of incorporate some of these, or all of these techniques over a period of time. Sometimes it's difficult for everybody to do all the techniques, but at least, the breathing techniques, the relaxation exercises, as what we call as the rainbow relaxation, that one. And with
I remember that.
Remember that one?
It was amazing.
Ever listen to that rainbow? I think it's about 21 or 22 minutes long. Ever fully. I have definitely fallen asleep. I would fall asleep.
Absolutely. Within the first 10 minutes, I guess.
I think so.
Like...
I don't go beyond 5 or 6 minutes. And it definitely is one of my weakness. So if I really struggle, I'm not pregnant. If I really struggle to sleep, I play the rainbow go to sleep. So these are the techniques. And if somebody is just wondering, but what if birth becomes medical? What if, as much as I'm preparing and I'm not in a position to make use of some of these tools, and that's absolutely okay. Birth is, you know, I always call it as, there's nothing called as a perfect birth. That is a fantasy. We can't, you know, do that. And it's also about understanding that birth is also not linear. Birth has a way to, every birthing experience is unique. The whole birthing experience sort of meanders to a point where it unfolds completely differently. But my course will also sort of focus on how things can change a little bit as well. What happens if it becomes a medical birth? What are your rights? Understanding why sometimes, you know, a medical intervention might be a necessity. And some parents might want to know a little bit more about, you know, pain medication as options. And again, it's not that it's wrong that if you decide to have a pain medication, the choice has to be yours, but it be an informed decision-making process. So it means that you need to understand what are the, you know, different pain medication options that are available, the pros and cons of it all, so that you make that option at that, I mean, you make the choice at that point in time, so that you feel comfortable about making those choices. I also talk about what we call as gentle C-section birth, mother-centric C-section birth. You know, for whatever reason, if things become medical to a point where it ends up being a C-section birth, what are the rights of the parents, so that it also becomes a good birthing experience for them. So we cover all aspects of labor and birth. And sometimes I think that people think that if it is hypnobirthing, is it only for home water birth or home birth or birthing center birth? That's not the case. The course will focus on all different aspects of labor and birth so that they can feel a lot more prepared for what is to come.
Yes, that was actually my question. Like, is hypnobirthing for everyone? And actually, does it work on everyone? Does it work for everyone? Yes.
It's like this, right? When you're trying yoga for the first time, or when you're trying to run for the first time, or, you know, there's that, you might have a bit of a resistance in the beginning. But it's also about continuing to do it over a period of time. And then to a point where you see that, it makes sense for me to be able to actually do this. As much as if birth sort of goes according to a plan, nothing goes according to a plan, to be very honest with you. If it goes according to a plan, it means that you might actually not end up using a lot of hypnobirthing tools as well. Absolutely okay, because you've had a quick, easy, comfortable birth, then it's fantastic. But I think we will need these tools when the going gets tough, when things become a little bit more medical. For whatever reason, you're struggling to make, you know, like, oh, but, you know, this is something that we didn't, you know, I did not want, but, oh, I might have to actually already think about it. So instead of actually thinking about or facing that situation, when you're in labor, you've already had a conversation with me in class, and maybe as a couple, you've already had a conversation around. So you're making yourself a little bit more better prepared to face if that situation arises, and that makes it a lot more easier. So I think hypnobirthing is for everyone. It's also about, when I say that whether it works for everyone, it's also very, very personal. It's also about committing to doing it and doing it every single day. I mean, it needs to be part of your routine. It needs to be part of your, you know, your daily chore in a way. But over a period of time, as much as it feels like a chore in the beginning, it sort of feels very nice and natural to be able to you're taking some time off to be able to bond with the baby, and bond and also understand your pregnancy. Because in this day and age, we run all the time. You're busy all the time. To be able to take some time off and to be able to do that, I think it's really fantastic.
Yeah, it's true. I was very like I was not sure at the beginning, to be honest, because I like to really, I'm a control freak. So I was like, oh, hypnosis, am I going to lose control?
Yeah,
Am I
all
going
of
to
us
have
are.
to
It may not
surrender?
be you. Yeah.
But it really worked, and I remember talking with my husband. Is like, what are you going to do? And hypnobirthing courses, they are done with your birthing partner.
Yes.
And I think it's a very important point. It's not only the exercises that you do for yourself, it's also exercises and techniques that your birthing partner learns. And so I would like to focus on this a little bit. So what is the role of the birthing partner within the hypnobirthing program?
Yeah. See, I always say that, you know, I've also had a lot of single mothers do my course. You know, it'll be always nice if you have a partner or a support person with you, so that I always think that, you know, you shouldn't be giving birth in isolation by yourself. I think it's really have somebody. So sometimes when I have a single mom come for class, it could be, you know, her doula who's accompanying her, or it could be her best friend who's actually accompanying her, or it could be, you know, her mother who's. So I've had different combinations as a possibility. So the idea is for the mother to not feel alone, so that she's actually someone else who can actually be with her during the whole process of labor and birth. And the understanding as well as a support person, especially with men. I mean, I'm not, I'm not inclusive. I mean, I want to be inclusive about all support person, but sometimes I feel like with men, they somehow feel like I'm not so sure what I'm supposed to do. And it's also really difficult for them to actually see their partners, their loved ones go through something so intense. And they're like, but what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to handle this whole situation? But as soon as they finish the first session, they sort of feel like, I have a huge role to play. They are the mediators. All support person, not only men, all support person are the mediators between the care provider and the mother. And the role of the support person, when you sort of have a discussion about different kind of, scenarios as possibilities, and you write down your birth preferences. And again, I don't like to call it as a birth plan because nothing goes according to a plan. I'd like to call it a birth preference. So when you go through these preferences as well as a couple, or with your doula, or with your mother, whoever is going to be with you during the whole process of labor and birth, they become the advocate as well for what you want. And that's very important in the laboring room. So that's why the course is with the support person. It doesn't necessarily have to be your partner. It could be anybody. So that's something that is, that makes the whole exercise, as doing it together, makes it a lot more nicer for people to sort of, take back all this information and have a conversation at home in the next few days. And they'll come back with more questions. And then, or they might be like, yeah, but we did this technique and we don't feel comfortable with this. Or can you help us more, a little bit more with this one? Any sort of tweaking and conversations around it. It makes it so much more interesting and nice to be able to do it together. And so that the both of them are on the same page. The most important thing is for the support person to understand what is it that the mother wants.
Yes.
That's very important.
Yes.
So if they are on the same page, then it means that they can actually talk to their care provider, whether they want to give birth at home or whether they want to give birth in the birthing center or the hospital. So it's with their midwife, or for whatever reason, if things are already medical during their pregnancy and if they have to give birth in the hospital, then having a conversation with the clinical midwife in the hospital or OBGYN, understanding their rights and understanding what they want, so that they can make those informed decision-making process. And for that, it's important that you do it together.
Yes, and it's a process. So like you said at the beginning, hypnobirthing courses are offered in 5 sessions over 5 consecutive weeks. So that's a period of time during which you have the opportunity to discuss a lot of things. So you said 5 sessions, about 2.5 to 3 hours for each session.
3 hours, as much as I would say 2.5, it's never 2.5, it's always 3, because we get into these really nice conversations and people start more questions, or they would want to sort of hang around and probably redo one of the techniques or something like that. It's always up to 3 hours. So I always say have another half an hour as buffer when you come for a class. It's usually 15 hours.
And actually, what is a good time to start with the course?
That's again another interesting question, because I usually say start as early as possible in pregnancy.
Oh, really?
Right? As early as, even it could be 18, 19, 20 weeks. What happens when you start doing the course that early is that it helps you and your partner bond a bit better, and you have such a positive outlook about your pregnancy, and you start enjoying your pregnancy even more when you start doing it that early, right? Orients you in a very positive way for the rest of the pregnancy. But not all is lost if you don't do it in the first 18 or 20 or 21, 22 weeks. Even if you're in your 30s, 30 or 31 or 32 weeks, that's absolutely okay as well. But most of the time you're trying to figure out yourself in the beginning, right? So until about, say, 30 weeks, you're trying to find out, okay, what else I need to be looking at? And, should I be buying this, or should I be preparing myself for this? And there's also that fear of the unknown, right? Whereas when you do the course a little early on, then you already feel a lot more prepared. Sometimes mothers feel like, but I might forget all these techniques. These techniques are not that difficult that you will actually forget. Techniques will always be there with you. And the techniques are really simple and easy to learn. The only thing is consistency. You have to continue with, over a period of time. That's all.
Yes, absolutely. I didn't know that you could start as early as...
Really early. You could start really early. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Chitra, for all this information. Super practical and super insightful. For me, hypnobirthing, like I said, I discovered it on the late, and I'm really happy that it worked for me.
Know how the whole course went on, and I remember the experience that you had the previous time.
Yeah,
I was very, very glad that everything sort of went, the way you and your partner wanted it to be with your second birth. So I'm very, very happy that it all went, and we've had this friendship for such a long time. So I'm really pleased.
it's great. Yeah. I'm really happy that our paths crossed again. Is this how you say this? Yeah. There is a book by Marie Mongan. If you're interested in hypnobirthing, it's part of the course actually, but I did read it first because I really wanted to know what it was actually before I committed to anything. Yeah, exactly. So I was like, is it for me or not? I contacted you. I had already read it super fast because I don't know, it's just nature. It's just how nature works. There is nothing in this book that you can contradict, I believe, in my opinion. So it's a really eye opening. If you want to learn more about Chitra's courses, go to Parentally. All our courses are listed in Utrecht, Hilversum, and Amsterdam. Also feel free, of course, to reach out to her directly. I will tag you in the video, Chitra, and I will share this video on our feed.
That would be really wonderful.
Very, very soon.
I have one more thing to sort of let people know. So yeah, apart from the book, the handout, it comes with audio files that you can actually start listening to. And I also have a podcast called Baby Ahoy.
Yes.
Yes, and I've sort of interviewed people who've actually done the course, not only hypnobirthing course, people who've done, I also teach another generic childbirth education called Through Access, that's the expat desk. But I have all sorts of birth stories, especially for the question that you asked, saying that is hypnobirthing for everyone. If you tune into Baby Ahoy, it's available on Google Podcasts, Stitcher, iTunes, and also on Spotify. It's also available on my website. You will listen to different kind of birth stories, all sorts of birth stories which are home water birth to, a vaginal birth after a C-section, to how a mother wanted to have a birth at home, where she opted for a pain medication. I mean, all sorts of birth stories. I've also listed, a gentle C-section birth because of breech births. We speak about, I think there's a twin birth story as well. And now I'm also recording a lot of birth stories from fathers, how their experience was in the birthing room, and also how they're actually coping in the postpartum period. So there's just one conversation with the dad that came out last month. But there'll be more to follow. So please, tune into my podcast as well if you want to have an understanding of what I do, and also to listen to other birth stories from the Netherlands.
It's a great podcast. Maybe how I listen to it. I also recommend it. There is also a great story of a BV back.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
It's really nice. Yes, what I wanted to say is if you have any further questions, don't hesitate to contact us, or me, or Chitra directly, even better. I don't know if you have anything else to add.
No,
Chitra?
I think that's about it. I'm so glad that we had this conversation here, Carol.
Yes, me too.
We should have a conversation so that, I want your story to go on my podcast as well. So that's definitely something that people can look out for.
Yes. I'm looking forward to that.
Sure.
Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us for this very first live of Parentally, and I hope the first one of many. Have a beautiful rest of the day, and see you soon. Goodbye.
You too. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for
Bye. Bye.
Okay, bye.